Okay, so tonight we're going to take a look at a very simple ReactJS app that is going to actually talk to the blockchain and Theta and bring back information about the block given a block number. So let's get started. First of all, the easiest way to start with a React app, unless you have sample code that you like, is to simply run this npx command. You have to have npm installed and so on. You can also run npm install, let's see, you want to install create React app, and then so they have instructions here on doing that. Once you have your app, then some of the stuff I didn't even bother with. For this purpose, I stuck with the main page of the app. If you're doing a real ReactJS app, you create a lot of components and you stick them in the back and export them and call them when necessary. But you don't put everything on one page usually. But for this purpose, I decided to, since it's very simple. So here is our very simple app. First of all, what you have to do, in what I did is I made this a component, which is essentially a class, and created a constructor. And then now they have this concept of state variables, and those are things you can kind of use throughout the component. And I set up a bunch of variables. Now I had to play around with this for a while, to be honest, to make sure I was making the calls correctly and I had the variables I need and I was doing things in the right place, etc., etc. Then what you have to do in ReactJS is you bind your methods, your functions, to this component with these commands. So this is the handle click and this is get the block. Now they have methods that you can use at different states of when the app is being loaded. So when the component is mounted, you can then call something. And in this case, what I did is I said, give me the connection to the blockchain. Now, because I didn't provide any input, it provided me a connection to the mainnet. And what I did, so now once I have that is the key to talking to calling all the methods that interact with the blockchain, because now I have a connection, I can talk to it. So what I decided to do is to just get a block, give it a block hash, and return the block. So the block hash, let's first look at the, let me see here. Where did my little, it's right here, it's in here. So this is what the app looks like. Not particularly pretty, but it makes the point. You put in the hash, the block hash, which you would get from doing the looking at the mainnet, looking at the blockchain. You pull off a block, you get the block, you hit this, and it returns the timestamp. I got the numbers mixed up. That should be the timestamp. That's the status. Oh wait, it is right. Status, and this is the timestamp, and this is the number of transactions. So my formatting isn't great, but as I said, I was more concerned with actually getting the data. So I needed to, this is the status, this is the timestamp, this is the transaction number of transactions in the block. So now that you see what it does, even though it's not very pretty, we can now go back and look at the code. So basically all this is doing here, this line, is getting the number we put in for the block that we want to talk to. Now, this is important. We have to wait until we get the result. Now, for this await to work, it has to be in a method that is started with async, which means go off and do it, and then return when you're ready. So it does that. It goes off, it gets the block, and it waits, and it finally returns the block. Once it does that, then, and this is why wait is so important, it can set the values. Now, if we didn't have a wait there, it's just going to keep going, and you're going to get crazy values. But using, this is saying this is something that's just going to go off and do its thing, and it does it, but it forces it to wait before it actually continues and finishes. So then it gets the block. So it's got the block, it's got the information. This happens when you click the button. And what also happens is then once it does this, it renders or prints out the values. So you can see here's where the button is defined, and then we got the status, and it sets it to status, the timestamp, and the number of transactions. So as you can see, it's pretty simple, but it does actually talk to the blockchain and get the data we want, and we can do whatever we want once we have access to these values and to the methods that actually talk to the blockchain. So there are a bunch of other methods that we talked about the other night, but what I wanted to show you is, now this came from an example I was looking at. Just so you know, I didn't put this, I was doing a little copy, little editor inheritance, if you will, and you can't call set state. It was reminding you can't call set state in the constructor. What you do in the constructor is you define the state values, and then as you change them, you do the set state, and you access them, this dot state dot stat. Now let me show you one other thing, and let me see, I will probably have to, do I even have it? Okay, let's see if I can get this to come up here. And we've talked about this before. In the browser, you generally have editing tools, developer tools. Now, this is also very important. In order to use React does it, has its own, it's not just straight. So I have a little, there is a Chrome extension I'm using called React Developer Tools. So when I bring up, and I'm going to have to make sure this actually came up, developer tools, let's see what happens. And that it comes up with the, where am I looking? Oh, I'm in sources. And it kind of knows that I'm since I have the extension and I brought the extension up, what it does is it actually looks like you can actually see the ReactJS code. So that is essential if you're using ReactJS. Now obviously there are other ways of doing this. You can go old school and use AJAX calls. That's another option. I just think actually this is actually calling a method, so you probably would not, probably better to use something like Reacts here. I think of AJAX, it's more like when you're doing the curl type calls and you're making an actual call to a now you are underneath the covers, but so you can use AJAX and curl commands is another option, but this is kind of neat. It's kind of easier to read and so on. It's a little bit of a learning curve. Oh, this is also in, I don't know if you can see this. Actually, let me make sure you can. No, you cannot. So let me see if I can bring that up. Window capture. Here we go. There we go. Okay. So you can see it now, and you can see how neatly and nicely the sources are, yeah, because this can also show you components, but you can see how nice the sources are. And you got your call stack, your watches, your breakpoints, and you can look at the values, which is how I figured out how to get this to work. I had to see, well, what value am I giving it? Am I getting back a connection to the provider? And all this kind of stuff. But if you're going to be trying to write any DApps, get real comfortable with this sort of tool, because this is how you debug this stuff. Okay, that's something you have, and these tools make it much easier to see what's going on. And I know we've talked about this before. You can actually see network calls and stuff like that. And, excuse me, all kinds of things. So hopefully this has been helpful. The key thing is, create your state variables. I found it worked fine to make my connection to the provider in component did mount. Now I said you might have been able to do this up here. I kind of like this. Get the block, because you're using an await. You're waiting for a response before you continue. You have to put it within a method that's called async, and then you simply call that in the handle click. And I found just doing it this way was the easiest, not trying to do other things within here. And then of course you can just set the values right in here and get see your results. So hopefully, even though this wasn't the prettiest app, this has been helpful and get you some understanding. Obviously there's a lot more we can do with this. And again, if you found it helpful, please give a like, please subscribe, please click the bell to get notified of future videos, and I will speak to you next time.